The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Three-peat, schmeat-peat. Wow. Whoa. All those who are ready to say, hey, Patrick Mahomes has passed Tom Brady. Never mind that Brady's got 7 and now Mahomes has 3. Yeah, he's not even halfway there yet. So let's pump our brakes. Let's recognize how good the Philadelphia Eagles are. And maybe if you want to throw this in, how close the Commanders are to being really, really good. Now, the Eagles are going to be still good next year. And the Commanders are going to have to be looking up at them. But, man, I love how everybody wants to anoint them as the greatest of all time before they become the greatest of all time and before they got their butts kicked to smithereens yesterday in New Orleans. We will have plenty of reaction to that, those who covered the game, those who played in the game. Also, the Hubie Brown farewell yesterday. I watched a lot of that on ABC. I actually did radio with Hubie before he got into television. That's how long I've been doing this. So I have some thoughts on that coming up. And I also have my favorite commercials from yesterday. I'm sure you have yours. But I don't think anybody expected what happened yesterday. And, I guess you can't really read too much into what is an insignificant act, as it turns out. But I was watching the pregame, and they had a shot of Patrick Mahomes, and he was yawning. And my interpretation of that, which was clearly wrong, was, well, these guys been there, done that. He's about to wrap up his 4th Super Bowl championship. I believe I said several times last week, you never bet against Patrick Mahomes, and that they were ready. They were ready for Philadelphia. Well, they were not. And, I thought even when they fell behind 10-0, that they were going to kick it into gear. We'd seen that before. And we had seen Tom Brady do this against the Atlanta Falcons when he was down 28-3 in the 3rd quarter. So I thought, 10-0, what's the big deal? And then Patrick Mahomes throws a pick 6 to Cooper DeJean, and then it starts to get interesting.
The kid made a great play. He sat underneath Worthy, and I tried to reset back and throw it across the field to D-Hop and put it in a tight window, and he made a great play on it.
And here's the play.
Mahomes rolling out, looking, firing, intercepted, picked up by Cooper DeJean, gets a block. DeJean is in.
Now, wait a minute, because at 10-0, you're still only halfway through the 2nd quarter. It's plenty of time for the Chiefs to come back, and we've seen them do that. We saw them do it last year against the 49ers. They do this, and as long as 15's got the ball, you got a chance. But now, whoa. And you know what this reminded me of? I went automatically back to this. Went back 41 years ago where the Redskins were kind of in this spot. Not exactly. They weren't going for a three-peat, but they were going for back-to-back, which had been only done a couple of times in NFL history, 3 times, once by the Green Bay Packers, and I'll get to their story coming up. Nobody wants to give them credit for three-peat, but they did, in fact, three-peat. But Packers won the first 2 Super Bowls. The Dolphins won back-to-back, first one against the Redskins, and the Steelers won back-to-back Super Bowls. So the Redskins in 1984, January of 84, after a great regular season, they had an unbelievable regular season in 83. They lost only 2 games, each by 1 point, and they had a record which will never be broken. They were plus 43 on turnovers. Yeah, plus 43. So they were setting that offense up with really short field position all the time. And at that time, they set the record for most points scored in a season, 561. But they got into a spot where they were in this game against the Raiders, and it's at the end of the first half, and it's only 14-3. Only 14-3. And, okay, they're going to get the ball in the second half. They're down 2 scores for sure, but, they can come back. And what happened is part of Redskin lore. Very late in the first half, an opportunity for them to run out the clock, regroup at the half, and figure out how to come back from 14-3. As Bill King called it, this happened.
Theismann back, looks off to the left, and he fires it out there. Intercepted! Jack Squirek! Touchdown Raiders! I don't believe it! Holy Toledo! The Washington Redskins went to the think tank once too often with that one. Theismann, a look off to the right, a swing back out to the left, and Squirek, the second-year linebacker, saw it all the way, and grudgingly, he doesn't want to do it yet. Tom Flores just smiled. Bill, I'm flabbergasted. I cannot believe that the Redskins, back on their own 12-yard line, with 12 seconds to go in the half, would do that.
Yeah, insane. In retrospect, insane. With a coach who was, kind of conservative, Joe Gibbs. I guess he wanted some kind of a spark. Maybe he thought they could bust one for a touchdown because Joe Washington, in a game earlier in the season, had gotten big yardage on that exact play against the Raiders. But this time, the Raiders knew what was coming. That's what happens when you put something out on, at that time, film. They were prepared. In fact, they were so prepared for this that Matt Millen was in the game, and they realized that Millen wasn't prepared for this play, so they took him out, and they brought in Jack Squirek, who knew exactly what was going to happen. He picks off the pass for the touchdown, and pretty much the game was over at that point. Redskins scored in the third quarter to make it 21-9, but the extra point was blocked, so that took away any of the momentum, and it wound up as the biggest blowout in Super Bowl history, 38-9. And this reminded me of that. Cooper DeJean, and I'll get to his story later on. He shares now some history with a Redskin cornerback who did something a few years later, which we'll get to. But, that I thought was the turning point in the game. I thought any chance that the Chiefs had for a comeback, which was pretty good going into that play, totally went out the window on the Cooper DeJean interception. Mahomes, being the leader that he is, took the loss for what happened and took the blame for the loss and said it was basically not up to my standard.
Credit to the Eagles, man. They played better than us from start to finish. We didn't start how we wanted to. Obviously, the turnovers hurt. And, I take all the blame for that. Just those early turnovers swing the momentum of the game, and then they capitalized on them, and they scored. They scored on the one, and then they got a touchdown immediately after. So that's 14 points that I kind of gave them, and it's hard to come back from that in the Super Bowl. And so just didn't play to my standard, and I have to be better next time.
That's all me. Alex Smith, who once started ahead of Patrick Mahomes, was a mentor to him in his rookie year on the ESPN set with Chris Berman and Booger McFarland. This is his reaction to what he heard from Smith.
Listen, I love what Pat said there. He's an ultimate leader. This guy's going to step up to the plate. He loves to compete. He's holding himself very accountable. He talked about his standard. Yeah. But the truth is, this guy's masked a lot this entire season leading up to this. And this is an offensive line that got exposed today. Patrick didn't have any help out there. The running backs had a combined 7 carries for 24 yards right there. Xavier Worthy came on at the end, but obviously a lot of that was kind of garbage time to finish things up. He was out there by himself, right? And again, I love him taking accountability, but they got to address some things this offseason, right?
Yeah.
The shuffle things around. Again, we moved Joe Thuney out to left tackle. I know that got talked about a lot, but all of a sudden we got a backup left guard in there going against some amazing pass rushers on the inside. Right, Taylor had struggled on the right side. All of a sudden, we've weakened. We got 3 weak spots up front. We can't chip and double all these guys. Again, I felt like he had no chance, and obviously pressed and tried to do too much, and then those turnovers compound things.
There's a thought that when you move a guy from a strength to another spot to cover for a weakness, now you're weakening 2 spots, and eventually that's what happened to the Chiefs because the left guard became weak, and Joe Thuney's not a tackle. He's a battler. He's an all-pro guard. But tonight he got exposed by a defensive line at tackle. And so I think we have to ask the question about Andy Reid. At some point, would you have been better off putting Thuney back at guard and bringing the young guys? At least you can chip the edges, Alex.
Yeah.
They have pressure coming from everywhere tonight. And so Andy's going to be second-guessed about that. But more importantly, they have to figure out a way from an offensive line perspective. Patrick Mahomes has started 7 years. He's been to the AFC title game 7 times. He's been to 5 Super Bowls. The only time he's been beaten in Super Bowls is when he couldn't finish the game upright. So if you're Brett Veach, the GM, and you're Andy Reid, the head coach, we got an all-time great quarterback. We got to protect him at all cost, because right now that's cost him, you could honestly say it's cost him 2 championships.
No doubt. I mean, they took a risk. They let Donovan Smith go. They won a Super Bowl with Donovan Smith last year at left tackle. Took a risk, drafted Kingsley in the 2nd round. That didn't work out. And then the shuffle began, right? The rest of the season. And, again, we're kind of Band-Aiding things. And the one thing that happens, and, Book, you can speak to this, it's one thing for Tooney to go out at left tackle for one game. You do it week after week after week. You give a good defense 2 weeks to study all that film. Yeah. I mean, these guys find weaknesses, right? They know how to exploit it. And again, all day today, he was getting bull rushed. He found himself in the lap of Patrick. So they got a lot of things to figure out up front.
Yeah, look, they didn't even blitz him, and they were rushing 4 the whole game. 6 sacks, a pick 6, another interception, and a fumble. That ain't Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, he had a bad day, and he took the blame for the loss. But what they're pointing out there is his protection was not good. The Eagles, who have a 25-year general manager in Howie Roseman, and hopefully Adam Peters is going to turn out to be in that mold and stay around here a long time and build and rebuild. But that's what you have to have, that kind of stability. And Howie Roseman, who, by the way, took some heat early in the season when he traded draft picks to get Jahan Dotson and he wasn't doing much. Well, Dotson got the Eagles' offense going early when the Chiefs' plan was to shut down Saquon Barkley, which they did to an extent. He had 57 yards rushing. I think a lot of people thought, well, if the Eagles are going to win this game, he's got to get 150 or more. Well, that's not the way it worked out. They dared Jalen Hurts to beat him, and he did. He wound up with the Super Bowl MVP. They completely controlled the clock, a lot of it because of turnovers, 37 minutes to 23. They ran 21 more plays. The Eagles had 70 plays. The Chiefs had only 49, 345 total yards. And a lot of that yardage that the Chiefs had at the end, 275, that was when they got a couple of garbage time touchdowns. It's a lot like, the Super Bowl 26 for the Redskins when they were up 37-10 in the fourth quarter and wound up beating the Bills 37-24. That doesn't tell you how lopsided that game was. Neither does this one. This really wasn't a 40-22 game. This was like a 40-6 game. That's really what it was. And yeah, they just controlled them up front. And so when you're looking at the offseason and saying, ooh, Adam Peters, get another high-profile wide receiver to pair with Terry McLaurin. No, spend your draft picks, spend your money, get help on both sides of the line. The game is won in the trenches, as the Eagles showed yesterday. They protected Jalen Hurts, and they rushed the crap out of Patrick Mahomes. And that was really the difference in the game. So in Adam Peters, I think we trust, but also we've got a blueprint here with the Eagles, a team, by the way, which if you're going to be a Super Bowl team next year, you're going to have to get through Philadelphia. And I would not be surprised at all if the season opens in Philly, and it will, on a Thursday night, with Washington playing there. I think that would be an incredibly attractive matchup. It's a rematch of the NFC Championship game. See how much the Commanders reacted to what happened to them. Yeah, they did give up a lot of points, over 50 points in that game, but this was not supposed to be a year that they were contending for the Super Bowl. Next year, they start knocking on the door a little bit harder. Maybe they kick the damn door down, but it's probably going to start in Philadelphia. And, it also reminds me of this. In 1986, when Jay Schrader was the quarterback, they got manhandled in the NFC Championship game by the Giants. Giants won the game 17-0. A lot of factors in that, but line play was huge. They decided that Jeff Bostic was too small at center. They didn't cut guys in those days. A little different. No salary cap, so Bostic stayed on the team. But they moved Russ Grimm to center, an overreaction to what Jim Burt was doing, tearing them up inside. And what happened was that there was an injury, and that moved Bostic back inside to center, and they went on a run and they won the Super Bowl. I don't think they'll overreact, but I think that what you saw last night and what you saw in the NFC Championship game with the Eagles forcing turnovers, as they did yesterday, they didn't just get turnovers, they forced turnovers with the pressure they delivered up front and just made it for an awful night
for Patrick Mahomes. As, again, sacked 6 times, 3 turnovers. He had a quarterback rating, a QBR of 11.6, which is the lowest in a Super Bowl since they started keeping track in 2006. This was a beatdown, and this was a convincing win by the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's a blueprint for success that Howie Roseman knows what the hell he's doing. And when you see moves that are not necessarily glamorous but pay off in a big way, like taking Jalen Hurts in the second round, they thought, maybe he's just going to be a backup quarterback. But we like him. We like the fact that when he got benched in the national championship game at Alabama for Tua Tagovailoa, he didn't transfer. He came back another year knowing he was going to back up Tua. After backing up Tua for a year, and Tua had another year, he went to Oklahoma, finished runner-up for the Heisman Trophy, and just continues to prove over and over again, hey, you want to count me out? Watch this. And I'm not going to make a lot of noise. I'm just going to do what I do. Yeah, he's had disappointing performances, but his last 2 Super Bowl appearances, one that he won, one that he didn't win, were both 2 of the best of his career. So in big games, he performs in a big way and, again, walks away with the Super Bowl MVP from last night. They couldn't do this. I guess there are rules against this. But if you really wanted to be accurate as this game was won, you'd give the Super Bowl MVP to the Chiefs' defense. The closest we came to this was Super Bowl 12, which was also in New Orleans, in 1978 when the Dallas Cowboys beat the Orange Crush Denver Broncos. And the co-MVPs of that game were Randy White and Harvey Martin, defensive tackle, defensive end from the Cowboys. Roger Staubach in his last Super Bowl was good, not good enough to win the Super Bowl MVP. Randy White, Harvey Martin, co-MVPs, and you could have made a case for 3 or 4 or 5 of those players for the Philadelphia Eagles who just made life miserable last night for Patrick Mahomes. Coming up, Jalen Hurts talking to Tom Brady about his night, and something very interesting pre-Super Bowl from Brady. If you want to know what it's going to take for Jayden Daniels to get to that level, and it looks like he's got an understanding of what it takes, Brady lays it all out. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So did all this three-peat Michigas get under the skin of the Philadelphia Eagles? Apparently it did. With the Chiefs going as far as, and this got public somehow, as far as contacting Miami Heat president Pat Riley, who actually trademarked three-peat when he was the coach of the Lakers. Didn't do it, but trademarked that so he could cash in on it. And so they contacted him and said, are we okay to use three-peat? And Riley said okay. So this news obviously travels into the Eagles' locker room, and defensive tackle Milton Williams said, yeah, definitely that hurt us, that bothered us. They were talking about getting the copyright and all that BS. Throw that S in the trash as they sacked Pat Mahomes 6 times, 11 quarterback hits in the 40-22 win, and they did not send a single blitz. They got pressure on 16 of his 42 dropbacks. They made life miserable for him. And Jalen Hurts, who was looking at a defense that was keying on stopping Saquon Barkley, they did to an extent, though he caught a big pass to set up a touchdown, and he also ran for 57 yards. He walks away with the MVP. He threw for 226 yards, scored a touchdown on a tush push, and threw for 2 more TDs, and got what is called the LFG award from Tom Brady, which he does after every telecast. And you can use your imagination for what LFG stands for. But this was Brady with Hurts on how he got it done yesterday.
I just think, man, all the hard work, all the effort, all the determination over the years, and then carrying that over to this team, carrying it over to Philadelphia, and being able to build something very special over my tenure here and coach's tenure here as well. And so it all goes back to the work, and it's a team effort. I was telling Mr. Lurie, defense won championships, and that defense played their ass off today, and it showed.
It's amazing, and you did it all game long right from the beginning. Did you ever imagine that you could dominate the Chiefs the way that you guys did today?
Well, I think it was a matter of taking it a play at a time. The whole thing was focusing, blocking out the noise and ignoring the wind and staying true to what the main thing was. And so earlier in the year, we set out to do this, and this was the ultimate mission, and it looks like we did it. You know, I'm still processing it.
I know.
We worked so hard for something, and and it comes, and just really want to soak it in.
It's going to take a while to process it. You're going to wake up tomorrow morning, and you're going to feel so good. What I want you to feel good about is don't let that jersey out of your sight. I had a few stolen over the years.
I ain't letting that happen.
Keep track of that. It's going to be memorable down the road. I'm so happy for you. Congratulations to you and your team. You guys played so well all season long, and there couldn't be a better Super Bowl champion than the Philadelphia Eagles, and you led them to victory. Congrats, my friend.
Much love, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate you.
That's Tom Brady with the Super Bowl MVP Jalen Hurts. Yeah, that jersey, one of them, it was one of them from New England. It wasn't the jersey that he wore for Tampa for his last Super Bowl. That was stolen by someone posing as a reporter, and they did like a whole. Might have done like a whole 30 for 30 on it, how they ultimately recovered the jersey overseas. I think now, because of that, there's a lot more security on these things, and probably should have been really heightened security yesterday with Trump in the building. So I don't think anybody got away with that. This is something that was done before the Super Bowl. This is from last week. Colin Cowherd with his show there, and Brady, who works for Fox, has a number of obligations to go on that show. And this was about Super Bowl preparation. Again, this is before the game. So, he doesn't know who's going to win or lose, but he takes you to a couple of areas. One, how crushing it is to lose a Super Bowl, but also how much it takes to win a Super Bowl. And as we've watched the development of Jayden Daniels over the past year, you're seeing signs that he totally gets this, that it's what you do in the tape room that means as much as what you do on the field. And preparation to succeed means as much as hard work to succeed in the weight room, on the field, all those things. It's all about knowing what the hell is going on. So a couple of things here. It's about 4.5 minutes. It's Brady, all Brady, about how crushing it is to lose a Super Bowl, so how much this was going to mean to the Chiefs going into the game, and how hard it is and what you have to do to prepare to get to the level of winning Super Bowls. Tom Brady with kind of a tutorial here on the Colin Cowherd Show.
I literally went wire to wire for 2 weeks. I just realized how important these games were. And I think for me, what I realized early in my career about Super Bowls was, man, we won my first year. Like, what's the big deal? It's just like I went to college, we played in the Orange Bowl, I won. We went to the Citrus Bowl, we won. Okay, now I'm in the Super Bowl, we won. All right, what's the big deal? We didn't have a great season in 2002. We won in 2003. What's the big deal? We won in 2004. What's the big deal? Right? Then you go to 2007 and you lose. And then you go to 2011 and you get to the Super Bowl after having a great team in 2010, and we lose. And it was just like, wow, this is way harder. We went 10 years between winning. And then I said, you know what? These Super Bowl moments that I get a chance to partake in, I'm going to exhaust every bit of energy I have for this week of games. Because when you lose this game, this is on your resume forever. A loss in the Super Bowl matters more than any loss that you're ever going to be a part of. When I go in Philly and they go, Philly special, and I'm at the Knicks game with my son, and Spike Lee, I throw him a ball and he puts the ball and he catches it on his head like the helmet catch. I mean, that was 17 years ago and I'm still living that thing down. And no one remembers the loss I had to Peyton in the 2015 championship game. No one talks about the 2013 loss to Denver in the championship game. No one talks about the loss to the Ravens in the 2012 AFC championship game. They all tell me about the losses in the Super Bowl, though. So I think the challenging thing, if you look at Patrick, for example, like, you want to win this game if you're Patrick, because if you don't, you're 3-2 in Super Bowls. And it's not a great feeling. So there is a lot of pressure, certainly from my standpoint, as I got older and I realized the enormity of this game, how important it is to actually win this game. So my last year, in my last Super Bowl I was a part of, I was 2 weeks of watching film. Friday night, I was just going through the film. I knew Kansas City's defense better than they knew themselves. I knew their body movements, the way their linebackers moved, the way their safeties moved. Tyrann Mathieu, Nick Sorensen, Shavarius Ward. I knew everything they were doing. I got out there on the field. I looked up as I was walking the line of scrimmage and said, okay, they're blitzing. And then I was dealing with it right away. I walked up, I said, okay, they're going to bail to cover 2. Ball snap, cover 2. And I knew I had the answers to the test. That's where I was great. That's where my magic superpower was. It wasn't how fast I could run. It was how fast I could diagnose what they were doing. What's the special quality? What's the internet speed of me as a quarterback? Fast as I was Starlink before Starlink. You know, now other guys, if it's a slow processing speed, well, he's going to get you. And the reality is I could figure out what they were doing before they did it because that's how I learned to play the game. And that's how I believe most quarterbacks should play the game. Unfortunately, as we've talked about, most quarterbacks aren't playing the game like that anymore. They're fast when they get out of the pocket, when they have to make decisions, but I didn't snap the ball unless I knew what they were doing and if my guys were going to be open. The one benefit you have as a quarterback, before you snap the ball, you know where everybody on your team is running. If you have 5 eligibles out in the route, I know where all 5 are going. If I look at the defense and I say, none of my guys are going to be open based on this coverage, we didn't design the play for this coverage, I don't need to snap the ball. I can run something different. I can check to a run. I can check to a screen. I can signal a receiver and change a route. And then I would just change the route to a route that I thought would be open. I'd catch the ball, I'd throw it, and it'd be a 15-yard gain. Everyone would be like, God, it looks so easy. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's easy because you're not paying attention to the right thing. Right. What's going on in here is what my superpower was. That was Peyton Manning's superpower. That was Drew Brees' superpower. Those were the guys that I tried to be like. That's what we did a great job of. So that part of the game is what I am really fascinated by. And when I see players play like that, those are the guys that I think have the most upside.
Yeah, and I think we can easily put Jayden Daniels in that category, and he seems to have embraced all of that and realized this. Brady didn't even play until his second year. He played in one game when Drew Bledsoe was the starter when Brady was a rookie in 2000. But he was absorbing things. He was learning behind, which is, sometimes better. But, yeah, I don't think he can do much better than what Daniels did this year. But he's got a clear understanding of that you have to know what everybody's doing on every play, offensively and defensively, and that comes from putting in the time, studying the tape. He said he was, basically locked in a room for 2 weeks, doing nothing but studying tape, practicing. It got that way when Magic and Bird played in the finals in the 80s. They both talked about this. They went into like a dark tunnel for the period of time. That's what you have to do to get to that level. And Brady lays it out there as to what he was able to do, and I think that's the best explanation I've ever heard of going to the line of scrimmage. Okay, I've seen this before. This is what they're going to do. No, they're not going to blitz. They're going to drop back. Oh, they're bringing the safety up. All those things that you saw before, you know what they're going to do now. So, they'll disguise coverages. But if you're experienced, you know when they're disguising coverages. That's part of the game. The mental game is the biggest part. And, all this talk about RG3 and he could have been Jayden Daniels if he didn't get hurt. No, he couldn't have, because he didn't do all that. He was more, he was more interested in being physically ready to play more than anything else, which, he was. But that's the game. Brady comes nowhere close to athletic talent of either RG3 or Jayden Daniels, but mentally he understood the game and understood how to do it. So anyway, on this first part about losing, and I have known great successful people in athletics for a long time, and all of them, to a man, to a person, will tell you that the losses hurt so much worse than the wins feel good. And that, that's Brady, who lost 3, had an undefeated team, was going for history, going for 19-0 when they lost to the Giants, and the David Tyree helmet catch ended that. And then they lost to the Giants again for number 2, and then lost as quarterback of the Patriots to the Philadelphia Eagles to Nick Foles, a backup quarterback. Those are what he remembers the most. The 7 wins, yeah, they're sweet. but it's the losses that sting. And Patrick Mahomes, who's now lost 2, is already starting to feel that.
I mean, both sucked. I mean, there's no way around it. Anytime you lose a Super Bowl, it's the worst feeling in the world. They'll stick with you the rest of your career. I mean, these will be the 2 losses that will motivate me to be even better for the rest of my career, because you only get so few of these, and you have to capitalize on these, and they hurt probably more than the wins feel good.
And this combination of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes already being celebrated as the best coach-quarterback combo of all time. Bradshaw and Noel won 4 together. Bill Walsh and Joe Montana didn't win 4 together, but Walsh basically left behind a team that George Seifert, could put on autopilot as he won his 4th. So it's a little bit premature. And Andy Reid now, who is, some have said, is the best coach of all time, which is foolish. He's a great coach. He's going to be a Hall of Fame coach, but I think anointing him as the greatest of all time is way too premature on that. And now Andy Reid, having lost 2 as coach of the Chiefs and 1 as coach of the Eagles, is a 3-time Super Bowl loser.
Listen, they all hurt. You get this far. You battled your tail off to get this far. Very, very hard to do. And it's we spent a lot of time doing this, and it's not a hobby, right? So we're in it the whole way, and spent a lot of hours doing it as players, as coaches. So it's going to hurt. They all hurt when you get to this level, and these things happen. 3-peat aside or any of that stuff, that you get this far and you don't play as well as you want to, it hurts.
Yeah, that's what they remember. If you talk to Gary Williams, who went to back-to-back Final Fours and won a championship, won an NCAA championship, which not all great, successful college basketball coaches do. What he talks about is losing in 2010 to Michigan State at the buzzer after they'd come from behind to take the lead in the final seconds. Those are the things that stick with you. The losses, the bad losses hurt so much more than the successful ones feel good. That's really the essence of greatness, that you're always striving to win, and when you win, you want to win another one, right? I mean, it's not going to be long before the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be asked about repeat. And right now, Vegas has made them the favorites to repeat, not surprisingly how dominant they were yesterday. And then you had the retirement of Hubie Brown, and this was a 2:00 game on ABC. Very, very well timed. People want to get away from the pregame stuff for a while. I watched it after the Maryland game, and or some of it anyway. It was Philadelphia and Milwaukee. Hubie at one time, I think, was an assistant coach in Milwaukee, and they had tributes to Hubie throughout the game with his partner Mark Jones. Mike Tirico was very moving in his tribute. Dick Stockton, who did a lot of games with Hubie, he had a million partners over the years because he did television for a long time. As I remember, I was working at WFAN, and this would have been 1987, which is when we launched, and Hubie had been fired, I believe, at the end of the 86-87 season. So here it is. We launch in July, and Hubie was hired with Rick Pitino now becoming coach of the Knicks, that Hubie would do radio spots for WFAN once or twice a week during the basketball season, and he did them with Greg Gumbel. And then Greg left because the owners of the station, which was then on 1050, had bought all the NBC-owned and operated stations, and they inherited Don Imus. So they told Greg, well, look, I know you got a 2-year deal, but we're going with Imus. They paid him for the last year, and he left. And he left, I think, like in May of 1988, I want to say. And so I took over his spot temporarily, knowing that, Imus was going to be coming in either September or October. And I did the morning show for a while, and I kind of inherited Hubie. So pre-TV Hubie, he was doing radio. And the great thing about doing a radio spot with Hubie, you didn't have to know anything. You just say, good morning, Hubie, and he would talk for 5 minutes, and then you'd say, thank you very much. And then he would call the producer to see how he did, and he was great. I mean, he was brilliant at understanding the game and explaining the game. He had coached it for a long time. He won a championship with the Kentucky Colonels in the ABA, and had coached a long time in the NBA with teams that didn't have a lot of talent and seemed to get the most out of them. And then he transitioned to TV a year or two later and has been in TV almost exclusively, though I think he did have a couple of stints. I know he had one with Memphis not that many years ago, like within the last 10 to 15 years. He coached Memphis for a couple of years, but has been back in TV. He's had terrible tragedy in his life over a 2-year period. He lost his daughter, he lost his son, and he lost his wife who had Alzheimer's. And here he was back yesterday for his final telecast. And this is how part of it. I'm not going to play the whole thing because he went on for some time. But after they, wrapped up the game and after Mike Breen had told everybody the crucial statistics, they did some post-game interviews where players, like Damian Lillard, gave tributes to Hubie and that kind of thing. And then Mike said, okay, the last word is yours, Hubie. And this is how he opened, and part of what was probably a 3 or 4 minute tribute to all those who he'd worked with over the years.
My father, best man I ever met, said a thing when I was a grammar school kid, playing sports, never give less than 100. And when you think about that, it sounds easy. It's difficult. The times get tough. But you want to, as a coach, never come to practice without being a plus factor for every one of your players. You want to treat them with respect. And then when you get into television, you're in a whole new ballgame. It's a whole different life. And you work with wonderful people. And I always try to say, this isn't just a two-man act, as you and I both know. We got the guys in the truck, the producers, the directors. They're taking care of an army of people, and we've got great television.
That is Hubie Brown, and it was an emotional farewell. Mike Breen got choked up for this because that's the kind of respect that he had and everybody had for Hubie Brown. And at 91, it's probably time to stop doing television. But he was great at both things, coaching and TV. And I'm certainly going to miss watching him, hearing him. He was just terrific, and I'm honored to have had an opportunity. It was brief. It was only for a couple of months, but to have done weekly radio spots with Hubie before he launched his TV career. A couple of other NBA things, and these are kind of cautionary tales about the Wizards, who are in full tank mode. They're not even tank mode. They're in teardown mode. They're 9-41 and deserve to be so. They stink. They did have a 3-game winning streak, but they got a couple of home games this week before the All-Star break. They got San Antonio tonight and Indiana Wednesday. But as you build for the process, which, Josh Harris, as owner of the Sixers, signed off on, and they got their stud in Joel Embiid and built around him, well, here's the problem. Can't stay healthy. Joel Embiid played for only the 15th time yesterday. The Sixers lost again, 135-127. They're now in the 11th spot for the play-in. They're on the outside looking in for the playoffs. And he came back just this past Tuesday after missing 15 games. Now, when he plays well. He's averaging 26 points and 10 rebounds and 7 assists. But he only played 39 games last year because of a knee injury, and he says that he's going to probably need another knee surgery in the offseason. He's 30 years old. He can't play back-to-back, and he may not be able for the rest of his career. So all that building to get to the point where you're hopefully contending for an NBA championship with a superstar, but the superstar can't play. And the same thing now with the Dallas Mavericks, who traded Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis. Davis makes his Dallas debut on Saturday night against the Houston Rockets. The Mavericks win the game. He has 16 points, 7 assists, 3 blocks in 31 minutes, and goes out with what he says is a no big deal, just a little leg injury. Well, turns out that the leg injury could keep him out for a month. So it's great to have these players. And, if the ping pong balls fall right, that's Cooper Flagg in a Wizards uniform next year. But it also could be Cooper Flagg in street clothes next year, year after that, or whoever else comes along. And, Adam Silver has gotten pushback on this, but he has talked about, and he talked about this last week on the Dan Patrick Show, about shortening NBA games to match up against international games and have 4 10-minute quarters. So you're knocking 8 minutes a game off over the course of a season. That's like 15 games. And that might make some sense. And If it's going to cut down on injuries, fine. But also what they found was this load management, which he fully endorsed, where like superstar players can show up in a city like only once a year if it's an Eastern Conference team playing in the Western Conference, vice versa, and sit out because of load management. And the kid that got tickets for Christmas to go see Steph Curry play, well, gets to see Steph Curry in street clothes. And you look at stars like Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid in street clothes, which is probably going to be the case for a while, especially with Davis. Maybe Embiid comes back, but he's playing hurt. He's telling you he's going to need more surgery. Can he jockey this team into the playoffs and win some playoff series on a bad knee? Probably not. And this is the gamble that you have. You're not only gambling with the number of ping pong balls that you're going to have and possibly find a way to get into the top of the lottery. But then once you get that guy, you don't know if he's actually going to be able to play. It's nuts.
Well, the offseason has begun in the NFL. It started a couple of weeks earlier for the Washington Commanders. What Jayden Daniels says he needs to do in the offseason, we'll get to that later this hour. What were your favorite commercials from yesterday? I've got mine. And there was kind of some history made with Cooper DeJean yesterday, not just the pick six, which I think really cemented the game for the Philadelphia Eagles, so kind of shut off the all comeback talk for the Kansas City Chiefs, though I guess you could never count out Patrick Mahomes. What history he shares with a Washington Redskins cornerback. It's kind of interesting. Maybe not the most I don't want to say politically correct thing to say, but here's the deal. Okay, so Bobby Beathard was the general manager of the Redskins. He's the one that built the 4 teams that went to the Super Bowl, the 3 championships. Charlie Casserly was the GM for the team in 1991, and he did a really great job in Plan B free agency, loading up on guys just before the start of the real free agency in the NFL. He was good at managing. They didn't have a cap then, but they had a way of bringing in veteran players, but also he did really well in the later stages of the draft, not necessarily in the top part of the draft. And Bobby was a guy who would trade away first-round picks. He loaded up on guys who weren't necessarily on the radar for anybody. And he was apparently obsessed. I say apparently. I don't know, but it just seemed to me that he was obsessed with finding a white cornerback. And if you want to get into some deep psychological study here, Bobby's brother, Pete Beathard, was a pretty good NFL quarterback, played for 5 or 6 teams over a 7 or 8 year period, started some, and Bobby didn't make the NFL. Played in college and was a corner and a white cornerback and didn't do it. So he as a draft evaluator was great. I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame for good reason, for things that he did, especially in the really late parts of drafts when he got real finds and got guys in mid rounds like Russ Grimm, who's in the Hall of Fame, and when he signed Joe Jacoby as an undrafted free agent. Those kind of things are things that made Bobby Beathard. But he one year took a corner named Torrey Nixon in the second round, a white corner. And he was so bad, he traded him before the season started. He never even played a game here. He was here in the preseason. And then in 1987, he took Brian Davis, a white corner out of the University of Nebraska. And he played as a rookie in that Super Bowl where Doug Williams threw the 4 touchdown passes, 1988. He wound up playing here 3 years and then bounced around for a few years after that. Had, sort of an average NFL career. But until yesterday, there had not been a white corner who started for a Super Bowl winning team until Cooper DeJean did it, and did it in a big way for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Mahomes rolling out, looking, firing, intercepted, picked up by Cooper DeJean, gets a block. DeJean
Yeah, he got the pick 6, so he picked off a future Hall of Fame quarterback and took it in for the touchdown. And Brian Davis, while he didn't get a pick 6, he did pick off John Elway. So if you're looking for trivia, there it is. the two white corners who started for Super Bowl champion teams, 1988 to 2025, do the math on that, whatever it is. That's like 37 years between Super Bowl championships, I think. So there's some history for you there. More importantly, here's a rookie out of the University of Iowa who makes a name for himself on the biggest stage. And after his night was complete, spent some time talking about his accomplishment with Scott Van Pelt on ESPN.
It'll always stick with me. Being able to play in the Super Bowl, first of all, my rookie season in the NFL, and being able to score a touchdown is even crazier. I'm just so happy to be a part of this team and this organization.
I was joking with you before we came on, going back to your Iowa days. You've always been a guy that when you get your hands on the ball, you've got a nose for the end zone. At what point, Cooper, when you've got the ball, are you thinking, I'm getting ready to score in the Super Bowl?
Right when I touched it. I was trying to find the open lane, find the open grass to get in the end zone. Luckily, I had some guys throwing some blocks out there for me, and I was able to get in there. It was awesome.
Cooper, your defense all year has been excellent, as good as any in the National Football League. Everyone talked for the 2 weeks leading up to this game about Spagnuolo and the Chiefs' defense. I understand why. But you all had 2 weeks to game plan as well. How do you best kind of describe the plan you had and how well you executed Vic Fangio's idea of what you could do tonight?
I mean, it's just us working together as a whole defense and preparing, throughout the whole week, like we've done all year. We stuck to what we've been doing all year, playing our defense, playing the way we play, flying to the ball. I'm just happy to be a part of this group and be coached by Coach Fangio and everybody else on the staff. It's amazing.
Cooper, do you have any idea the level of mayhem that you will see in your city when you get to the parade? Any comprehension of what you're about to be a part of?
I have a little.
I didn't mean to cut that off, but that's Cooper DeJean, who's very excited about where the Eagles are, and I mean the funny thing was that Kelsey, Travis, not I always get him confused, Jason Kelsey, wearing the Mummers outfit and screaming obscenities at the last parade. I bet he's going to be a part of this. I mean, it's sort of an awkward Super Bowl for him. He was rooting for his brother in some ways, but he's always going to be a part of Philadelphia Eagles lore, and so I'm sure he's going to be a part of the parade. He seems to get his face on all the time, everywhere, but it's kind of an awkward celebration for him. And boy, did you see the look on Travis Kelce's face? I mean, there's a lot of speculation that had they won the game, he was going to propose to Taylor Swift down on the field. That's not going to happen, obviously. And maybe they will, in fact, get married, but the storybook ending that some people hope for didn't happen. We'll see if he retires. I mean, you hate to go out on a note like that, but he is 35 years old. He was the oldest player on the field last night, and whether he comes back for another year, we'll have to see. Nick Sirianni, a very interesting study in coaching. Remember, early in the season, they get to 2-2, and the Cleveland game puts them at 2-2 after a rough start, and the fans are all over him, and he mixes it up with the fans and starts yelling at them, and back and forth, and that gets on all the talk shows, and this is a guy whose team had collapsed the year before. There was a suggestion of a rift between Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, and oh my God, they're just falling apart. And here he is, Super Bowl champion. And there was even a shot, I don't know if you noticed this on the sidelines, where he and A.J. Brown apparently were cussing at each other. But this is before A.J. Brown caught his touchdown pass. And those are kind of things that you don't normally see in regular season games because there aren't as many cameras. When they got as many cameras as they do at the Super Bowl, that's going to get picked up. But that's in the heat of the battle. After the game is won, a little bit different story. So Sirianni, after completing the Super Bowl championship, becoming only the second Eagles coach to win one, got on the set on ESPN with Chris Berman and Alex Smith and Booger McFarland to celebrate the victory, and then as he was yakking, here came A.J. Brown, and he got a headset too.
It takes it takes selflessness. It takes A.J. Brown knowing that and Devontae Smith knowing they can go for 100 each game, but we have Saquon that's going for it. So you take selflessness. And that's what the excitement is when you make a play. The selflessness, the not wanting. These guys love each other. Love is the key to this team. They don't want to let each other down. They'll fight for each other. They'll play hurt for each other, and that's awesome. That's the best part about being on a team, and it took everybody.
Well, these guys will jump in a minute. You've said even recently, we really don't care how we win.
Yeah.
Barkley had, what's wrong with him? He only had whatever it was, 57 yards rushing, and you wanted a blowout. Proof and pudding.
Well, obviously, when you put the resources in to take away Saquon, there's other things open up, and so that's what we say. We don't care how we win, and we don't care about anyone's opinion of how we should win. We just want to win. And like Jalen said, just because we weren't winning a certain way doesn't mean we can't. We didn't need to. Tonight we did. We needed to. And that's where you tune out the noise, you tune out everything, and you just focus on how you're going to win each and every week, and how you're going to get better each and every week.
Well, tonight you look pretty darn good. You got better. Boog, Alex?
Coach, how satisfying was this for you? Throughout the season, there was scrutiny in Philadelphia, even from your own fans. Yeah. But tonight, you're a world champion. How satisfying is it for you personally?
When you have criticism and when you have adversity, I'm grateful for that because it helps you get better. If you embrace the adversity, it helps you get better. And so and really just doubling down on the things you know are true and not really caring about the opinions of others and doubling down on the things that you know are true. In our case, is tough, detailed together, how we get better, how do we get better at that? And I said to somebody already, is like, what a great example for my, that I'm going to be able to do for my kids when they're going through struggles on social media or in the world. And I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to be able to look back on this year. So I'm grateful for the adversity because the adversity makes you who you are. I can think back in my entire life of that. And so embrace the adversity, work your butt off, and, do it how you know how to do it. Even if you're not the vision of what people think you should be, you got to lead the way you need to lead.
Absolutely.
How do you get that? Go back to this whole thing. How do you get guys like this? This guy's a dog on the outside to buy in to a different formula, right? To check their ego. Jalen, Devontae, like all these guys check their ego. Like I know you kind of brushed over that. That's hard. That's rare in professional football. And obviously it paid off and it worked. But can you talk about that process?
Well, it takes special people with good heart. This guy's one of the best people in the NFL. One of the best however you say that. I don't know. I'm not using right. But one of the best people in the NFL. Yes. He's selfless. Yeah, he wants the ball because he knows he can change the game every time he touches the ball, as you saw tonight. But he's a world champ forever, and we can't be world champs without him. And you know what? He missed a couple games this year. He would have had 1,400 yards again, even if we were in the run-heavy team. And so Devontae, Jalen, we have selfless guys, and that's just the work of you putting into team over and over again. But you cannot get better as a team unless you have good people, and we got good people. Great football players, great people.
When did you guys know? Okay, they'll probably sell out to do the best against our running back.
Last week.
Yeah. That's the thing every single week. We know we have a special running back, a special running game, and we just know we just got to be ready. Be ready to answer the call and make plays when our number's called.
Yeah, A.J. Brown, and really it was a questionable offensive pass interference. Brady was all over that, said that should not have been called. So that might have set up another touchdown for him. This was, all Philadelphia, and the reemergence, I guess you can look at that way of Nick Sirianni, who had a team in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, had pretty much of a collapse last year where they lose 5 of their last 6 games, got blown out in the playoffs against Tampa Bay, and they're back this year, and they go 16-1 after a 2-2 start. The one loss here to the Commanders, and that was after Hurts got knocked out with concussion in the first quarter. That was against Kenny Pickett, really most of the game. So they have a coach now who's going to get paid. He's going into the last year of his contract, and he's going to make a lot of money in a contract extension in Philadelphia. Not that he doesn't make a lot of money already, but he's going to make even more. Ryan Clark, who's been an analyst on ESPN, has worked with SVP all year. He talked after the game with him from New Orleans. Scott was here in the studio and talked about what Sirianni has been able to do with this team and Jalen Hurts, who, was not thought of as the guy who would walk away with the MVP. I think most people going into this game said, Kansas City wins, it's Mahomes. Philadelphia wins, it's Saquon Barkley. But instead, it's Jalen Hurts. And this was Clark on all of that, Sirianni and Hurts, and what they accomplished as a duo when all anybody could talk about leading up to the game was Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid.
Thank God Nick Sirianni didn't fire himself when everyone outside of that building was calling for his job, saying he wasn't behaving in the way that a head coach should behave. The man just kept coaching, and he's a true testament to do the job to the best of your ability until it's no longer your job. You saw his continued growth, not only as a coach when it came to what they did schematically, but when it came to who he was as a person, who he was as a leader of men. And as the season got longer, I started to hear more and more players go to bat for Nick Sirianni. More and more players say how much they loved Nick Sirianni. And when you see a night like tonight where they look like the more prepared team, they look like the hungrier team, they look like the team that was ready to execute the best, it says a lot about who Nick Sirianni is, not only as a coach, but as a man. And now he's a Super Bowl champion.
So is Jalen Hurts. And here's a guy who went through it at Alabama, didn't blink, right? Has always behaved, even as a young man, like a CEO in charge of not his brand, but who he is as a man. And I just have such admiration and appreciation for that. And you knew Spags was going to say, all right, we're not going to let Saquon beat us. We're going to see if number one can. Well, that defense did. But how about Hurts and his level of play tonight? What stood out to you?
I've been saying through the last few weeks, let's not forget what we've seen from Jalen Hurts in the biggest moments of his career. And I think tonight he showed again exactly who he can be when he's called upon. From the early pass to A.J. Brown that was called back because of OPI, I felt like Jalen Hurts was locked in. And then you looked at the way that he used his legs. He extended plays, the physicality in which he played with, and the poise he displayed the entire game, especially when Spags brought pressure. I'm going to say this, and I don't know if he'll be mad at me, but I hope that he won't. Jalen and I have developed a friendship over this season. We met at Up Fronts, and we continued to talk. We continued to communicate, and I was always impressed that every time we spoke, every time that we text, all he talked about was winning. All he talked about was focusing on the main thing and how he needs to continue to get better to allow his team to achieve the ultimate goal. And to him, I say, brother, you did that. You were steadfast in your belief in yourself, steadfast in your belief in God, steadfast in your belief in this team, and now you get to reap the reward as a Super Bowl champion.
That's Ryan Clark with Scott Van Pelt after the Eagles' blowout win last night. And, now you put Jalen Hurts in almost a different conversation. Is he at the level of Mahomes? Maybe not. But he's an elite quarterback, and you legitimize that with a Super Bowl ring. A Super Bowl ring, by the way, and I'll probably sound very old on this, but Sean McVay, the coach of the Rams, who's won one, has been to another, and is still, I know he's under 40. He's probably like 37 or 38, something like that. He was wearing his Super Bowl ring on the set. It looks ridiculous. They need to make 2 Super Bowl rings. One that you can show people in your house. You can put it in a trophy case. The other one that you can actually wear. And the former Redskins that I know that have Super Bowl rings, like Joe Jacoby and Brian Mitchell and Doc Walker, those are wearable rings. It looks like a nice big college ring. It doesn't look like a headlight. And that's what this was for Sean McVay. I mean, it takes up almost all of his hand. It's impractical to wear. I don't even think you could eat with that on. So and it goes back to Michael Strahan after the Giants ended the undefeated season for the New England Patriots after the 2007 season, where he said, I want a ring that's 10 tables. People went, what? 10 tables? Yeah, I want people 10 tables away at a restaurant to be able to see it. And they just get bigger and bigger and bigger by the year. And God knows what the Eagles ring is going to look like. But, man, that's all you could look at was, oh, my God, what has he got on his hand? That's amazing. How could that possibly be a ring? It looks like Tom Brady's watch, which, by the way, sells for $740,000. Oi, coming up, what Jayden Daniels says is the number one thing he needs to do in the offseason. Plus, may even have time to hit the Maryland game from yesterday a little bit as well. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Rams coming up at 11 o'clock. If you go back a year when the Commanders knew that they were going to be picking number 2, and we had the big lead up to the draft, and was Caleb Williams going to go number 1 to Chicago? Most people believed that he would, but you heard, J.J. McCarthy, he's blown the doors off everybody. Everybody wants J.J. McCarthy. He just led Michigan to the national championship. Drake May is generational. He's got the size, he's got the strength. And the hesitation on Jayden Daniels was twofold. One, until his last year, his 5th year, he really hadn't emerged as a superstar. As a matter of fact, Mel Kiper told us that Jayden Daniels' mom called him before Daniels last year at LSU and said, what should he do? Should he come out for the draft or stay in school? Mel said, well, it's probably a 3rd or 4th round pick if he comes out. If he goes back to school and he has a great year, he could go in the 1st round. And he had a great year. He was the Heisman Trophy winner. And so when the draft came around, the question was, would he even move up to number 1, or would he drop, way down past the other quarterbacks? Who knew? As it turned out, the right move was made by the football team. They took him at number 2. He was Rookie of the Year almost unanimously, and the future looks incredibly bright. But one of the hesitations, was he didn't move as quickly up, in the early years of his career as some do. Like, he got significantly better from his 4th year to his 5th year in the NFL, and also with his weight. At some point, he was listed at like 205, and oh my God, he's going to get broken in half. He'll never last. He's too thin, yada, yada, yada. He came out for the combine. I think he was 210 for that. And he had some injuries this year, hurt his ribs, missed some time, and I think he got hurt a little bit as well. There's another injury along the way, but he started all the games, started every single game for the Commanders. And so now, making the rounds on Radio Row last week, he stopped by the This Is Football podcast run by Kevin Clark, and he said this, about the talent that's going to be added with draft picks and cap room, and also what he needs to do personally in this offseason.
I'm excited to see who they bring in. Do
you have input? Do you text Adam Peters and say, hey, I like this guy?
Nah, not really. I mean, that's it's conversations between me and him, but I mean, he lets me do my job, so I allow him to do his job. And if he calls me up and asks me about anybody, we'll have a conversation about it. But other than that, man, I trust his eye for talent. I trust, his decision making.
What about you specifically? If there's number one thing, on March 30th when you're working out, you're thinking about getting better at what specifically?
I haven't really sat down and thought about that yet. I got a couple things that my quarterback coach probably have written up and stuff like that. But the main thing I'll say is all season I was just bulking up a little bit more, putting on some more armor. Having a full off season now as first off season as a pro. I got a lot of time to really just ramp up and not trying to go and hit it straight to it. So that'll be the main thing. But quarterback specific wise, I get with my trainer, but I know he probably has a couple things, and I'm excited to get back to work and keep growing.
Last thing before we get to what you're doing with Visa, what's been your favorite thing about DC?
The fan base, man. I love riding to a game and seeing everybody tailgating, all the flags and everything, and they're very passionate.
What's been the most emotional kind of, someone coming up to you at at a store or anything? Do you get that a lot?
Yeah. People will say I changed their lives and stuff like that, and they're thanking me. Some people get very emotional, so it's awesome to see everybody just so excited to be a Washington Commanders fan.
Yeah, they have really changed things so dramatically in a matter of a year. A real general manager, a good coach who says some of the same things that Nick Sirianni said about his team, the brotherhood, the whole thing, and most importantly, a quarterback who I think while he was, right in that he didn't have to have that massive amount of weight to be successful in his rookie year, he also realizes the pounding that you take. And if you're going to make it to the Super Bowl, And, especially if you don't have the number one seed, that's 17 regular season games. That's 3 playoff games to get to the Super Bowl, and then that's the Super Bowl. That's 21 games. That's almost twice as long as a college season. So he's looking at, as he says, bulking up and putting on armor. So he's gonna add some weight. But again, it isn't the end all to be heavy. Lamar Jackson, I think, has played as heavy as like 230. He got himself down to 210 this past offseason. He's maybe an inch shorter, maybe 2 inches shorter than Jayden Daniels, but not much. And, it doesn't have to be a lot of weight. It's got to be distributed in the right way. And his body's going to mature anyway. He just turned, 23 or 24? So next couple of years, his body's going to be different as well, and the workouts that he does to add some weight. But he's also got one of those bodies that you don't necessarily feel comfortable adding a lot of weight to. You want to make sure you have the right, kind of weight on that. The Vegas numbers are interesting, too, with what's happened in this offseason. The Eagles, with the win yesterday, they've moved up the board. They are now the favorite for the Super Bowl 60. Various sites have them anywhere from plus 600 to plus 625. The Chiefs are now at plus 650. Then you have the Bills and the Lions, and somewhere in there is the Commanders. They made it with their run. ESPN bet lists the Commanders at plus 2,000 to win the Super Bowl. And the second most tickets, 7.4%, and handle 9.7%, backing them. That trails only the Chiefs at 10.8% of the bets, 13.3% of the handle. DraftKings and FanDuel also say Washington is in their top 5 most bet teams for the 2026 Super Bowl market. Yeah, everybody's looking at them. And, for what this is worth, it's different circumstances, different ages of the team, really, because you're talking about veteran teams. But George Allen took the Redskins to the Super Bowl in his second year. Joe Gibbs took the Redskins to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl in his second year. Dan Quinn took the Falcons to the Super Bowl and lost the Super Bowl in his second year. So, it's not inconceivable they could do this. The team that George Allen had, it was a team that they had kind of thrown together the year before with a lot of veterans. They had played well. They made it to the playoffs, lost to San Francisco, and then had a great regular season in 72 and went to the Super Bowl. They lost to the undefeated Dolphins, but they got there. And the team that Joe Gibbs had, remember, they started 0-5 in the 81 season, and then in 82 you had the strike year, which knocked out 2 months. They played only 9 regular season games, but they played their best football in the playoffs. And that's what's going to be key for next year. It's getting Jayden Daniels through the 17 games, making sure he's healthy for the playoffs, making sure your team is healthy, and then if a lot of things go right, you make it to the Super Bowl. But, it looked like the Detroit Lions were the prohibitive favorite from the NFC to get there. They didn't even get to the NFC Championship game. And it looked like at one point, Kansas City, they know what it's like this time of year. They know how to win, and they'll find a way to win that game. And they were never in it yesterday. They were down 10-0. And then came the Cooper DeJean pick 6, and for all intents and purposes, that game was over. Maryland basketball, a very disappointing second half early last week at Ohio State. They come back home yesterday to face Rutgers, and Rutgers has not had a good record this year, but they have 2 of the top 5 players in the country, Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. Both those guys one and done. Harper is the son of Ron Harper, who won some championships with Michael Jordan, and I think he also won with Kobe with the Lakers. I think he was a winning guy, winning with 2 different franchises. As it turned out, Harper was available for the game, and he was their leading scorer with 20 points. But Bailey only had 4 in the first half, and then sat out most of the second half. He was sick, which probably helped Maryland. But the big thing, and this is what was advertised once Maryland signed him in the offseason out of Baltimore, Derek Queen. And they had, I don't understand this, they had 47 scouts and personnel people there from the NBA to see this game. 47 scouts and executives from 23 different teams to see this game yesterday. I don't know why you need so many. It's only 30 teams, so some teams must have had multiple people there. But Queen delivered. He had a career-high 29 points, 9 of 16, 15 rebounds, 5 assists. He made 11 of 13 from the free throw line. He had problems from the free throw line at Ohio State. And if there was any doubt whether he was going to be one and done at Maryland, and Kevin Willard has said over the course of the season, he knows he's going to be a one and done and expects him to be a lottery pick, maybe even a high lottery pick. But if there's any question about that, like, oh, well, maybe because he's had some down games and has not played his best at times, maybe another year. If there's any doubt about that, with 47 people checking him out for the NBA draft, I think it's pretty certain that he's going to be one and done, and he's going to go to the NBA. He's not particularly fast, but he knows how to play the game. I mean, that's so key, and he's in the right spot, the right time, great passer. He's everything as advertised. He's had some down games for sure, but that comes with being a freshman playing on the road. They got another road game coming up this week, Thursday, I believe. It's at Nebraska, and then have some more home games coming up. But they should be firmly in for the NCAA tournament. May even have a double bye for the Big Ten tournament. And if they get to 9-5 in the conference with a win at Nebraska, they're pretty much in. They get to 19 wins as well, and they're not going to lose some of these games at home coming down the stretch. I guess the really only bad loss they've had this year was when they lost at Northwestern. But other than that, they played pretty consistently well, and I think Kevin Willard has done a really good job with this team. And, it's all about money now, and it's about getting guys and maybe even keeping guys. And he's going to lose Julian Reese, who's finally out of eligibility. But be interesting to see what he does in recruiting. He had a bad shooting team last year, recruited some shooters this year, and it's made a difference. Okay, that's a wrap on Super Bowl Monday. We'll have more follow-up coming up tomorrow. Also, Steve Young with a conversation with Graham Bensinger. I pulled some of the highlights of that. We'll get to that sometime this week, maybe tomorrow. Stay with us. Graham is coming up next, and I'll see you back here tomorrow at 9 a.m.